It was one of those bright, easy afternoons when the whole world seemed to hum softly in the background. The local shopping mall was alive with chatter, footsteps, and music drifting faintly from the food court. Kids ran between stores. Couples walked hand in hand, and a crowd had gathered around the shiny black grand piano placed near the center of the atrium. It was there for anyone to play, a kind of open stage for passing talent. Most people who stopped by played a few short tunes or stumbled through half-remembered songs. Others simply watched, amused or impressed. Among the crowd that day was a small group of teenagers laughing loudly and filming short clips for their phones. In the middle of them was a girl, small and bright-eyed, full of energy and mischief. She wasn't the type to take things too seriously. Her friends loved her for her humor and quick jokes. She was always the one who could turn an awkward moment into laughter. And that afternoon was no different. They were all a little bored, wandering from shop to shop, eating ice cream, joking about people passing by. Then one of them pointed at the piano. "Go on," one of her friends said, nudging her shoulder. "Bet you won't." The girl looked up. The piano gleamed under the lights, surrounded by people who stopped to take photos or listen. A man in a suit had just finished playing something complicated, earning a round of applause. The girl grinned. "What, you want me to play?" she asked, pretending to look offended. "You know I can't." "That's the point," her friend laughed. "Go do it. Act like you're some big star or something. Let's see how long it takes before they kick you off." The rest of the group laughed, encouraging her. She rolled her eyes, but she was already smiling. She loved a good laugh, especially if she could make her friends laugh too. "All right," she said finally. "You want a show? I'll give you a show." They cheered as she started walking toward the piano. Her heart was light. It wasn't supposed to be serious, just a prank, a funny little scene to post online later. She imagined herself pretending to be dramatic, hitting random keys while making exaggerated faces. People would laugh, her friends would cheer, and that would be it. Just a bit of fun. As she got closer, she could hear the faint echo of the previous player's music fading away. A few people were still clapping. The man in the suit smiled politely and stood, brushing his hands together before walking away. The girl stepped up, her sneakers squeaking slightly against the polished floor. The piano looked even more beautiful up close, smooth black surface shining under the warm lights. She ran her hand lightly across the top, feeling the coolness of the finish. It felt more serious than she expected. For a second, she hesitated. Maybe this was a bad idea. But then she heard her friends laughing again behind her, whispering and pointing their phones. She smiled to herself. "All right," she thought, "let's do this." She sat down on the small bench, straightened her back, and placed her hands on the keys like she'd seen pianists do in movies. The crowd that had been about to walk away stopped, curious. A few people turned their heads. Some smiled, expecting another young kid to play around. One little boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, pointing. The mother smiled indulgently. "Let's watch," she said. The girl could feel the weight of their eyes on her. For a moment, she almost laughed out loud. It was working already. Her friends were filming, trying not to giggle. She looked down at the piano keys, thinking about what kind of ridiculous noise she could make. Maybe she'd just bang a few random notes, make a funny face, then walk off dramatically. But something made her pause. Her fingers hovered over the keys. She pressed one lightly. A clear, pure note rang out, echoing softly across the hall. It was louder than she expected, deeper too. For a second, she just listened to it fade. She pressed another key, this time lower, then another higher. Slowly, without planning to, she started to form a pattern. It was small, uncertain, but something about the sound caught her attention. She frowned slightly, her head tilting, her fingers moving again almost without thought. The people who had expected a joke began to grow quiet. Her friends exchanged glances, lowering their phones a little. Then, as if guided by memory rather than thought, her hands began to move with purpose. The sound that came out wasn't random anymore. It was music, real music. The melody was soft, slow, familiar. It flowed gently, like water trickling over stones. Each note followed the next with surprising grace. The crowd's laughter faded into silence. The people who had turned to leave stayed. The echo of her playing filled the space, drawing more curious faces closer. She didn't know how long she'd been playing. Her body seemed to remember something her mind had forgotten. Somewhere deep inside, hidden under years of laughter and other interests, there was a piece of her that knew this sound. Her fingers moved faster now, finding the right keys as though they had been waiting for this moment all along. A few bystanders whispered, recognizing the tune. Some raised their phones to record, not knowing who she was but certain that they were witnessing something special. Her friends stared in shock. "Wait," one of them whispered. "She can play?" They had never seen her touch a piano before. None of them had any idea. But here she was, eyes closed, completely lost in the music. Her expression was no longer teasing or playful. It was calm, serious, almost peaceful. The melody grew richer, fuller. The sounds wrapped around the listeners, pulling them into her world. For a few long minutes, the mall felt different. The background noise faded, the chatter and footsteps slowing as people stopped to listen. Some leaned against railings on the upper floors, peering down. Others held their children close, smiling softly. The girl didn't see any of it. She didn't see her friends' wide eyes or the crowd that had doubled in size. She only felt the smooth keys under her fingers and the waves of emotion rising with each note. When she finally stopped, it was as if the air itself was holding still. For a brief silent moment, no one moved. Then the applause started, soft at first, then growing louder, echoing through the atrium. The sound startled her, pulling her back to reality. She blinked, looking around as if waking from a dream. Her friends rushed forward, still recording, but now shouting her name in disbelief.
When did you, what was that?"
One of them asked, her voice a mix of awe and excitement. The girl didn't know what to say. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked down at the keys. She smiled shyly, shaking her head. "I don't know," she said softly. "I just remembered." The crowd began to drift away, still talking about what they'd just seen. Some clapped her on the shoulder as they passed, smiling. One older man who had been watching quietly the entire time leaned in and said, "You have a gift. Don't hide it again." Then he walked away before she could answer. Her friends surrounded her, still buzzing with excitement. They replayed the video clips, laughing in disbelief. "You were supposed to make a joke," one said, nudging her. "What was that?" "You just made everyone stop and stare." She laughed weakly, still processing everything. "I don't know," she repeated. "I didn't even mean to, I just felt like I knew what to do." As they left the piano behind, she turned for one last look. The shiny surface reflected the lights and the movement of people passing by. Somewhere deep inside, something had changed. What started as a prank had uncovered something far more real. Something that had been waiting quietly for the right moment to return. That night, when she got home, she couldn't stop thinking about it. The sound of the notes still echoed in her mind. She sat on her bed, scrolling through the video her friend had uploaded. The comments were already pouring in. People were amazed, asking who she was, calling her the piano girl. She smiled, a little embarrassed, but also proud. For the first time in a long time, she felt connected to something bigger than herself. She didn't know where it would lead, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't done playing. The next day, the video was everywhere. What had started as a funny dare turned into something no one expected. By morning, the clip of the girl sitting at the piano had spread all over social media. Strangers were sharing it with captions like, "You never know who's hiding talent," and "This gave me chills." The video had been posted by one of her friends the night before, mostly as a joke, but it had taken on a life of its own. When she woke up and checked her phone, the notifications wouldn't stop. There were hundreds of messages, likes, and comments. At first, she thought something was wrong. But as she scrolled, she saw her own face on the screen. The moment she sat at the piano, smiling nervously. Then the way her fingers moved as the music began. Her stomach flipped. She had no idea so many people would see it. Her friends were already texting her nonstop. "You're famous," one wrote. "Check your messages," another said. She laughed, shaking her head. "It's not that big," she muttered to herself. But when she checked the view count, it was already in the hundreds of thousands, and climbing. At breakfast, her mother was scrolling through her phone, eyebrows raised. "Is this you?" she asked, holding up the screen. The girl nodded, her cheeks warming. Her mother smiled softly, surprised. "I didn't even know you could still play." "I didn't either," she said quietly, taking a sip of juice. She wasn't sure how to explain it. It wasn't like she had planned anything. She hadn't touched a piano in years. The last time she'd played, she was a child. Her family used to have an old upright piano in the living room. She would sit there for hours, plunking away at simple tunes while her father worked nearby. Back then, music had been fun, something that made her feel peaceful, but when her father lost his job, they had to sell the piano. Lessons stopped, and life moved on. As she sat at the breakfast table now, she couldn't stop thinking about how natural it had felt yesterday. It was like a forgotten part of her had woken up again. She remembered the feeling of the cool keys under her fingers, the way everything else had faded away when she started to play. It wasn't about showing off or impressing anyone. It was just about the sound, the emotion, the peace that came with it. Her mother looked at her for a moment longer, then smiled. "Maybe this is a sign," she said. "You should play again." The girl nodded but didn't answer. She didn't even know where she'd find a piano to practice on. It wasn't like she could just walk into a mall every day and play in front of strangers. But still, the thought stayed with her. Later that day, she met up with her friends again. They were full of energy, talking about the video, showing her all the reposts and reaction clips. Some people had written about her on blogs. Others had edited the video with background music or slow motion. One of her friends grinned and said, "You should totally start a channel or something. People love this stuff." She laughed, shaking her head. "It was just a joke. I didn't mean for it to be serious." "Yeah, but that's what makes it awesome," another friend said. "It was real. You didn't plan it. That's why people like it." As they talked, she felt both excited and nervous. The attention felt strange. She liked that people appreciated the music, but part of her didn't want to be seen as someone trying to be famous. It was just something that happened. Still, she couldn't ignore how good it had felt to play again. That evening, she decided to go back to the mall. She didn't tell anyone. She just wanted to see the piano again, maybe touch the keys for a minute. When she arrived, the crowd was smaller than before. A few kids were playing nearby, and the air smelled faintly of coffee and popcorn. The piano sat in the same spot waiting. She stood there for a while just watching as an older woman played a light melody. When the woman finished, she smiled at the girl and said, "Would you like to try?" The girl hesitated, then nodded. She sat down slowly, her hands resting on her knees for a moment before she placed them on the keys. The sound felt familiar again, like stepping into a memory. She started to play softly, just a few gentle chords, nothing fancy. The melody flowed out naturally, peaceful and calm. A few people nearby stopped to listen, smiling quietly. She lost track of time again. Each note carried a feeling, a story, something unspoken that she didn't know how to say out loud. When she finished, she looked up and saw the same woman still standing there, watching her kindly. "You play beautifully," the woman said. "Did you take lessons?" "Not for a long time," she admitted. "I just remembered a little." The woman nodded. "Don't stop again. You have something special." The words stuck with her all the way home. That night she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the music in her mind. Her fingers moved over an invisible keyboard as she lay in bed, imagining the notes. The sound was soft, but alive inside her. It made her heart feel full. In the days that followed, the video continued to grow. News outlets started calling it the piano prank that became a miracle. People wanted to know who she was. Some commented that her playing had brought them to tears, that it reminded them of their own childhoods or dreams they'd forgotten. Others simply said it made them smile on a hard day. She read every message she could. Some made her laugh. Others made her think. She realized that music could reach people in ways words couldn't. That thought stayed in her heart. A week later, she received an email from the mall's event coordinator. They had seen the video and wanted to invite her to play during a weekend event. "It doesn't have to be formal," the message said. "Just come, play a few songs, and share your story if you'd like." She almost said no. The idea of performing in front of people on purpose scared her. But after a long talk with her mother, she agreed. "You don't have to be perfect," her mother said gently. "Just be yourself." That's what people connected with. On the day of the event, the mall was packed again. The same piano stood in its place, polished and gleaming. She wore a simple dress and sneakers, her hands shaking slightly as she approached. The crowd was bigger than before. People holding phones, cameras, smiling, waiting. She took a deep breath and sat down. The first few moments were nerve-wracking. Her fingers hovered over the keys, and for a second her mind went blank. But then she thought of that first day, how it had all started as a joke, and she smiled. She closed her eyes and began to play. The sound filled the air, soft at first, then stronger. She played not to impress, but to express. Each note told a piece of her story. The laughter, the memories, the rediscovery of something she had loved and lost. The crowd grew silent. Even the children stopped moving. It was as if the whole place was breathing in rhythm with her music. When she finished, the applause was louder than before. She looked up, her face flushed, and saw rows of smiling faces. Some people were wiping away tears. The mall coordinator walked over and shook her hand. "Thank you," he said. "That was beautiful." As she stepped away from the piano, her friends ran up cheering. Her mother stood nearby, clapping proudly. For the first time, she felt something deep inside. Pride, yes, but also peace. This wasn't about being famous anymore. It was about finding herself again. That night, as she scrolled through the new wave of videos and messages, she saw one comment that made her stop. It said, "Sometimes life reminds you of who you are in the most unexpected ways." She read it twice, smiling softly. That's exactly how it felt. She didn't know what the future would bring, whether the attention would fade or whether she'd keep playing in front of others. But it didn't matter. What mattered was that she had found the courage to do something honest and real. The prank had turned into a moment that touched hearts, including her own. As she turned off her phone and lay back in bed, she thought about that first note she had played by accident, the one that had started everything. It still echoed faintly in her memory, clear and warm. For the first time in a long time, she felt completely sure of one thing: she was meant to play. Days passed, and the noise around the girl's piano performance didn't slow down. More and more people were sharing her story online. She was getting messages from local reporters, small radio stations, and even music teachers who wanted to know if she planned to keep playing. It was all so new to her. One moment she was just a regular girl doing something silly with friends, and the next, people were calling her an inspiration. At school, things changed too. Students who barely noticed her before were now coming up to her, asking questions, showing her videos of her own performance. "You're the piano girl, right?" they'd say. She would smile politely and nod, even though the attention made her shy. She wasn't used to being in the center of anything. Before all this, she preferred blending in quietly. Now she couldn't walk down the hallway without someone mentioning the video. Her teachers started asking her to play at school events. At first, she refused. She wasn't sure she could handle it. The thought of standing in front of hundreds of people again made her nervous. But one of her teachers said gently, "You don't have to be perfect. Just play the way you did that day." It wasn't about perfection. It was about honesty. Those words stayed with her. One afternoon, she went to the library after school. There was a small piano there too, dusty and slightly out of tune. She sat down and started playing softly, just for herself. The sound wasn't as smooth as the grand piano in the mall, but it didn't matter. The music filled the quiet room, comforting her. A few kids who were reading nearby stopped to listen. No one spoke. When she finished, one little girl said quietly, "That was pretty." The simple words made her smile. Maybe she didn't need a perfect piano. She started spending more time practicing again. Her mother noticed the change right away. Every evening, she would see her daughter sitting at the small keyboard they borrowed from a neighbor, lost in her own world. Sometimes she played for hours without realizing it. The house felt warmer somehow, filled with melodies instead of silence. Her mother often listened from the next room, smiling to herself, but not everyone understood. Some people online started saying that the whole thing was fake, that the video had been staged, or that she was just pretending to play. Reading those comments hurt. She knew she shouldn't care, but it was hard not to. One night, after seeing a few mean messages, she closed her laptop and sat quietly, staring at her hands. Her mother noticed and came to sit beside her. "Don't let them take your joy," her mother said softly. "People will always have opinions. But only you know the truth, the girl nodded. She didn't reply right away, but her mother's words stayed with her. That night she promised herself she wouldn't stop. Not for the attention, not for the praise, but for the feeling music gave her. The calm, the meaning, the connection. A few days later, she got another email. This one was from a local community center. They were organizing a small charity event to raise funds for children's education and wanted her to perform. "We saw your video," the message said. "Your story moved us. Would you consider playing a few songs?" Her first instinct was to say no, but something in her heart told her to do it. Maybe it was time to share again, not for fame or views, but for something good. She replied yes. When the day came, she arrived early. The event was small but warm, held in a cozy hall decorated with paper lights and colorful banners. Families sat at round tables, chatting and laughing. At the front of the room stood a modest stage with a piano waiting for her. She could feel her heart racing as she walked up. The host introduced her briefly, mentioning how her video had inspired many. The crowd clapped politely as she took her seat. Her fingers trembled slightly, but as soon as she touched the keys, everything else faded away again. The first notes came softly, gently flowing through the air. The room grew still. People stopped eating, stopped talking, just listened. This time she didn't think about the crowd or the cameras. She played for the children sitting on the floor, for the tired parents, for her mother watching proudly from the back of the room. Every note carried warmth and hope. When she finished, there was a long silence before the applause started. It wasn't loud or rushed. It was full of feeling. Afterward, several people came up to thank her. One woman said her music had reminded her of her late husband. Another man said it made him think of his childhood. Hearing those words filled her heart with something she couldn't describe. She realized that music wasn't just sound, it was emotion, memory, and healing all at once. That night, as she walked home with her mother, the air cool and calm, she felt peaceful. "You did something kind today," her mother said. "You used your gift to make people feel better." The girl smiled. "I think that's what I want to keep doing," she said. Weeks turned into months. The video slowly faded from headlines, but she didn't mind. The world moved on, but she continued to grow. She joined a small music club in town, where she met other people who loved playing instruments. They practiced together, shared songs, and encouraged each other. It wasn't about competition, it was about connection. Her confidence began to grow. She started writing her own small melodies, experimenting with sounds. One day, she decided to post a short video of her playing an original piece. This time, it wasn't filmed by friends as a joke. It was just her sitting quietly at the keyboard, recording on her phone. The video didn't go viral, but it got kind comments from people who said it felt real and beautiful. That was enough for her. Still, every once in a while, she thought about the first time she sat at that mall piano. How strange it was that something so simple, a prank, had changed so much in her life. It made her believe that sometimes life has plans we can't see coming. Maybe the things we do without thinking are the ones that lead us where we're meant to be. One afternoon, she returned to the same mall. The piano was still there, in the same place. She stood watching as a little boy played a simple song, his mother filming proudly. It made her smile. When the boy finished, he looked up at her shyly. "Do you want to play too?" he asked. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Sitting down again felt different this time. She wasn't nervous, and she wasn't thinking about who might be watching. She just played, calmly, gently, letting the music fill the air once more. The boy watched in awe. When she finished, he clapped excitedly. "That was amazing," he said. She laughed softly. "Thank you. You play really well too. Keep practicing, okay?" The boy nodded eagerly. As she stood up to leave, she realized something important. Music wasn't something that belonged to her alone. It was something to share, to pass on. Maybe one day that boy would inspire someone else, just like she had without even meaning to. That evening, she sat at her desk writing in her notebook. She wrote about everything she'd learned in the past months, about fear, hope, kindness, and second chances. She wrote that life could surprise you in ways you never expect, and sometimes what starts as laughter can lead to something deeply meaningful. She didn't know if anyone would ever read those words, but they felt true. Before going to bed, she played one last song on her keyboard. It was slow, peaceful, and full of emotion. When she finished, she smiled to herself. She didn't need applause or cameras anymore. The music was enough. As she turned off the lights, she whispered a quiet thank you. To the piano, to the people who believed in her, and to the moment that started it all. Deep down, she knew this wasn't the end of her story. It was just another beginning, waiting to unfold one note at a time. Months had passed since the girl's first performance at the mall, and though life had started to feel more normal again, something inside her had changed. She couldn't go a day without thinking about music. What used to be a forgotten part of her childhood had become her favorite part of each day. Whenever she sat at the small keyboard in her room, the rest of the world disappeared. The sound of the keys, the rhythm of the notes, and the calm that followed. It all felt like home. Her mother noticed how dedicated she had become. Some nights she would peek into her daughter's room and see her still awake, headphones on, eyes half closed, lost in melody. "You should get some sleep," her mother would say gently, and she would nod, smiling, but never quite ready to stop. The music had a pull stronger than words. One evening, as she practiced, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from someone she didn't know, a music teacher from a nearby academy. He had seen one of her newer videos online and wrote, "You have a natural gift. If you ever want proper guidance, our doors are open." She stared at the message for a long time, unsure what to do. She'd never had formal lessons beyond her early childhood. Most of what she knew now came from memory and instinct. The idea of studying again scared her, but it also excited her. Maybe this was the next step. After thinking about it for a few days, she told her mother about the message. "Do you think I should go?" she asked quietly. Her mother smiled. "If it feels right to you, then yes. You don't have to decide everything now. Just go and see." That weekend, they went together to the academy. The building was small but full of energy. Music echoed softly through the halls, students practicing, teachers giving lessons. The air felt alive. The teacher who had written to her greeted them warmly. "I remember your video," he said with a smile. "It was beautiful. You play with emotion, not just skill. That's something no one can teach, but I can help you grow." She felt nervous but curious. He led her to a practice room with a shiny black piano, much like the one at the mall. "Why don't you play something for me?" he asked. Her hands trembled a little as she sat down. She wasn't sure what to play, so she chose a simple tune she had been working on, a mix of an old song and her own melody. As she played, the teacher watched quietly, nodding along. When she finished, he said softly, "You have what most people spend years trying to find: heart. You don't just play notes, you tell stories." His words filled her with warmth. For the first time, she felt like maybe she really could become something more than just the piano girl from the video. He offered her a place in his weekend class, and she accepted. Every Saturday, she would take the bus across town, carrying a small notebook full of music ideas. The classes were hard at first, learning to read complex sheets, understanding theory, but she loved it. The other students were welcoming too, and for once she felt like she belonged somewhere. Outside of class, she still practiced at home. Sometimes her friends came over to listen. They would sit on the floor, phones in hand, filming her quietly. "You've gotten even better," one of them said once. She smiled but didn't say anything. For her, it wasn't about being better. It was about feeling something real. As months went by, her teacher encouraged her to write her own full song. "Something that tells your story," he said. Music can speak when words can't. The idea scared her. What if no one liked it? But she decided to try. She spent weeks writing, rewriting, and changing little parts. She poured everything she felt into the song. The confusion, the laughter, the fear, the rediscovery of herself. Every time she played it, it felt more like her truth. When it was finally ready, her teacher listened to it in silence, his eyes closed. When she finished, he smiled softly. "That," he said, "is what music is meant to be." Encouraged by his words, she decided to record the song and share it online. It wasn't fancy, just her keyboard, and her phone camera, but it was honest. She uploaded it one evening without telling anyone. She didn't expect much. Maybe a few likes, a few comments. But within days, people began to respond. "This song feels so personal," one comment said. "It made me cry." Another wrote, "I don't even know why, but this reminds me of something I lost." She realized that her music had started to do something she never planned. It was touching others the same way it touched her. It gave her a quiet sense of purpose. Then one day, her teacher called her after class and said, The city's youth music festival is coming up next month. I want you to perform your song there." She froze. "Me, in front of all those people?" He nodded. "Yes, you've come far. This is your moment to share it." The thought terrified her. The last time she played in front of a big crowd was by accident. Now doing it on purpose felt much harder. But deep down she knew this was something she had to do. As the festival day approached, she practiced constantly. Her mother helped her pick out a simple outfit, and her teacher guided her through rehearsals. "Remember," he said before her final practice, "don't think about being perfect. Think about being true." The night of the festival arrived. The stage lights were bright and the sound of applause filled the large hall. She stood backstage, heart racing, her hands slightly shaking. She could hear the faint music of the performer before her, a violinist playing a fast-paced tune. When it ended, the host called her name. She took a deep breath and stepped into the light. The crowd was huge, rows and rows of faces looking up at her. For a moment she felt frozen, but then she remembered them all. The moment her fingers first found the keys again and the peace that came with it. Slowly she sat down and began to play. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, but as the melody unfolded, her fear melted away. The song carried her. It spoke of small beginnings, of laughter, of rediscovery, of courage. It was a song about her journey, about finding herself again after losing something she didn't even know was gone. The hall grew silent. Every sound, every breath seemed to move with her music. When she finished, the silence lingered. Then came the applause, loud, genuine, full of warmth. She stood, smiling through tears she didn't expect. Her teacher was clapping proudly from the side, and her mother had tears in her eyes. After the show, people came to talk to her, praising her song and asking where they could hear more. She was overwhelmed but happy. For the first time, she realized that this wasn't just a passing moment anymore. This was becoming her life. That night, lying in bed, she couldn't sleep. Her phone was full of messages again, but she didn't open them right away. Instead, she stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the night. She thought about how everything had started from one small prank, a joke that turned into a dream. Life, she realized, had a funny way of leading you exactly where you needed to go, even when you didn't plan it. As she finally drifted to sleep, one thought stayed with her. She wasn't done yet. The world was big, and there were still so many songs left to play, so many hearts to reach. And somewhere deep inside, she felt ready for whatever came next. The morning after the music festival, everything felt different. The girl woke up early, her mind still replaying the moment she stepped onto that stage. The sound of the applause echoed faintly in her head, and for the first time in a long time, she felt proud of herself. Not just for playing well, but for having the courage to do it. The sunlight poured into her room, warm and soft, and she smiled as she sat up, still feeling the energy of the night before. Her mother made breakfast quietly, humming a tune that sounded familiar. "That's your song," the girl said, smiling. Her mother laughed softly. "I can't get it out of my head," she replied. "You did something beautiful last night. You should be proud." The girl nodded, still unsure how to describe what she felt. Pride, yes, but also something deeper. Like a new door had opened inside her. She didn't know where it led, but she wanted to find out. Later that day, her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't just messages from friends. It was an email from someone she didn't expect. The subject line read, "Invitation, Youth Music Showcase." She clicked it open, heart racing. The message explained that a group of organizers had seen her performance at the festival and wanted her to perform at a regional event featuring young musicians from around the country. It wasn't a competition, just a gathering to celebrate music and share stories. But to her, it felt like a dream. She read the email twice before running to tell her mother. "They want me to play again," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. Her mother's eyes widened. "That's wonderful. When is it?" "Next month," she replied, still staring at the screen. In the city. The next few weeks became a blur of preparation. Her teacher helped her refine her song and encouraged her to add a small twist to it, something that would make it truly her own. "You've already touched people once," he said. "Now show them who you really are." So she started writing again. This time she mixed in parts of an older melody she had played as a child. It was a small reminder of where she started, combined with everything she had learned since. Sometimes she stayed up late, experimenting with new chords, recording short clips on her phone and listening to them the next morning. Each version sounded a little closer to what she wanted to say. The night before the showcase, she sat quietly in her room, hands resting on her lap. For a long time, she didn't play anything. She just stared at the piano keys and thought about everything that had led her here. The prank, the laughter, the unexpected applause, the long nights of practice. Funny how one small thing can change everything, she whispered. The next day, she and her mother boarded a train to the city. The trip took hours, but it didn't feel long. The world outside the window blurred into green fields and passing towns. She kept her headphones on, listening to her recording again and again, not because she wanted to memorize it, but because it calmed her. When they arrived, the city was buzzing with life. Posters for the showcase were everywhere. Bright colors, smiling faces, and names of young performers. Her name was on one of them. Seeing it printed like that made her heart skip a beat. "That's you," her mother said, proudly pointing. The girl smiled shyly. "It feels strange," she said softly, "like it's not real." The event was held in a large auditorium filled with people from different places, families, teachers, musicians, and students. Backstage, the other performers chatted nervously. Some tuned their guitars, others warmed up their voices. She sat quietly in a corner, her hands folded together. Her teacher was there too, giving her a reassuring smile. "Just like the festival," he said. "Play from your heart." When her turn came, she walked to the stage with a steady breath. The lights were bright again, but this time she wasn't afraid. She sat at the piano and took one small glance at the crowd. Somewhere in the front row, she saw her mother smiling, hands clasped together. That was all she needed. Then she began to play. The song started softly, with a few familiar notes that echoed like memories. The melody flowed naturally, carrying pieces of her story. The quiet mornings, the moments of doubt, the joy of rediscovery. Halfway through, she transitioned into the new section she had written, blending the past and the present. It felt like speaking in two voices that finally understood each other. The music filled the hall, gentle yet powerful, and as she played the last note, the silence that followed felt almost sacred. Then came the applause. Loud, long, and full of emotion, she stood up slowly, bowing her head, her heart racing. She couldn't see individual faces through the lights, but she could feel the warmth of the crowd. When she left the stage, her teacher hugged her. "You did it," he said simply. "That was your best yet." After the show, several people approached her, asking if they could collaborate, or if she had more songs online. One woman, a local radio producer, handed her a card and said, "We'd love to feature your story. It's inspiring." The girl thanked her politely, but still couldn't quite believe what was happening. Everything felt like a dream she didn't want to wake from. That night, back at the hotel, she sat by the window looking at the city lights. "I didn't think it would ever go this far," she said quietly. Her mother smiled, sitting beside her. "You didn't chase fame," she said. "You followed your heart. That's why people listen." The girl nodded, understanding the truth in those words. She didn't start playing again to be noticed. She played because it made her feel alive. The rest had just followed naturally. In the following weeks, her video from the showcase spread online. People from different countries left comments sharing how her music had touched them. Some said it helped them through sadness. Others said it reminded them of hope. Reading those messages made her emotional every time. She realized she wasn't just making music, she was connecting hearts. One day she received another message, this time from a charity organization that used music therapy for children. They asked if she would be willing to visit and play for the kids. She hesitated at first, unsure if she was ready for something like that, but her teacher encouraged her again. "Music heals," he said. "Go and see for yourself." So she went. The center was small but filled with life. Children laughed, painted, and played simple instruments. When she sat down at the piano, a few of them gathered around curiously. She smiled and began to play a light, cheerful tune, something playful and bright. The children clapped along, giggling, some even trying to press the keys beside her. She laughed too, letting them join in. By the end of the session, one of the younger children hugged her tightly and said, "I like your music. It makes me happy." Those simple words touched her deeply. That night she cried quietly, not from sadness, but from a deep feeling of gratitude. She finally understood what her music was meant to do. Weeks turned into months, and her life kept changing in ways she never imagined. She was invited to small concerts, school events, and online shows. Her following grew, but she stayed humble, always remembering where it began, with a prank that led to rediscovery. Every time she sat at the piano, she carried that memory like a quiet blessing. But deep down, she knew there was still more to learn. She wasn't done growing, and she didn't want to stop. Her teacher once told her, "The best musicians are always students of life." And now she understood what that meant. One evening, while scrolling through messages, she came across a letter from a university music department. They had seen her videos and wanted to offer her a scholarship for further studies. It was beyond anything she had ever dreamed of. Her hands trembled as she read the message again and again. When she told her mother, they both sat in stunned silence. "You earned this," her mother whispered finally. The girl nodded, tears in her eyes. "I just wanted to play," she said softly. "And look where that took you," her mother replied, smiling proudly. That night, the girl sat at her piano once more. The keys felt familiar, like old friends. She played the same melody she had once played at the mall, only now it sounded different, richer, fuller, more alive. She wasn't that shy, unsure girl anymore. She had found her purpose through the same keys she once touched for fun. And as she played, she realized something. Her journey wasn't just about music. It was about courage, discovery, and the simple magic of doing something with love. No matter where life took her next, she knew one thing for sure. The music would always be with her. The day she received her scholarship letter felt like a dream. She read it over and over again, afraid that if she blinked, the words might disappear. It wasn't just a letter. It was proof that all those long nights of practice, all those quiet moments of doubt and hope, had led to something real. Her mother cried when she read it too, holding her tightly and whispering, "You did it." The music university was far from home, in a busy city filled with tall buildings and endless sounds. When she first arrived, she felt small again, like she was starting from the beginning. The campus buzzed with talented students, each one gifted, each one passionate. It was intimidating but also inspiring. For the first few days, she walked around quietly, observing, listening, and taking everything in. She didn't want to rush. She wanted to learn. Her first class was held in a bright room filled with instruments of every kind. The professor, a kind-looking man with silver hair, began by saying, "Here, we don't just teach you how to play, we teach you how to feel." The words struck something deep inside her. She knew she was in the right place. The lessons were challenging, but she loved every second of them. Music theory, composition, performance. Each day stretched her mind in new ways. There were moments of frustration, of course. Sometimes her hands couldn't do what her mind wanted. Sometimes the notes sounded wrong, no matter how many times she tried. But she didn't give up. She remembered the first time she touched the piano after years away, how nervous she had been, and how that single act had changed her life. This was just another step. She made friends slowly, other students who shared her quiet love for music. They would often gather in the common room after classes, playing songs together. Some played guitar, others sang softly, and she would always be at the piano, weaving their sounds into harmony. Those were her favorite moments, when music became a language of friendship. One evening, her professor stopped by during a practice session. He listened for a while and then said, "You have something rare. You don't play to impress. You play to connect. Never lose that." His words stayed with her long after he left. Months passed, and the university announced its annual recital, an event where students performed their original compositions in front of teachers, families, and invited guests from the music industry. It was both exciting and terrifying. The thought of creating something entirely new felt heavier this time. Expectations were higher now. People knew her name and they expected her to shine again. At first, she tried to write something impressive, something complex. She filled pages with notes and melodies, but none of them felt right. Every time she played them, they sounded cold, like she was trying too hard. One night, frustrated, she stopped playing and sat in silence. The dorm room was dark except for the small lamp on her desk. Her piano stood quietly waiting. And then it hit her. She didn't need to prove anything. She just needed to be honest, like she always had been. So she started again, slowly, softly. She let her heart guide her fingers. The new melody came from a deep place, a reflection of everything she had lived through. The mall prank, the rediscovery of her passion, The festivals, the children's laughter, her mother's quiet support. The music carried all of it, like a memory woven into sound. She called it the beginning again. When the night of the recital came, she felt nervous but peaceful. Her mother was in the audience, sitting proudly in the front row. Her teacher from the academy had traveled to see her too. Seeing familiar faces reminded her how far she'd come. As she walked to the stage, the lights dimmed, and silence fell. She sat at the grand piano, hands hovering above the keys. Then she began to play. The first few notes were gentle, almost like a whisper. Slowly the melody grew stronger, fuller, flowing like a river finding its path. Each part of the song told a story, of loss, of discovery, of courage, and of love. The audience sat still, their faces calm, their eyes closed, letting the music carry them. And for the girl, time disappeared. There was no fear anymore, only music, only truth. When the final note faded into the air, the hall remained silent for a few long seconds. Then the applause began, soft at first, then louder, rising like a wave. She stood and bowed, her heart full. Tears glistened in her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude. After the recital, several professors and guests came to speak with her. One of them, a producer from a well-known label, said, "Your music tells a story that people need to hear. If you're ready, we'd like to work with you." She didn't answer right away. It was too much to take in. She just smiled and thanked him. That night, when she called her mother, her voice trembled. "They want to help me make an album," she said. Her mother was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "You see what happens when you follow your heart?" In the months that followed, she began working with a small team of musicians to record her first album. It wasn't glamorous or easy. There were long days in the studio, late nights of editing, and moments when she doubted herself again. But every time she felt lost, she remembered where it all began, with that simple, unexpected moment at the mall piano. That thought always brought her back to herself. The album, when it was finally released, was called The First Note. It was a tribute to the journey that started with one innocent prank. Each song was a chapter of her life, some happy, some painful, all honest. Listeners around the world connected deeply with it. People shared their own stories in response, writing how her music gave them hope or reminded them to follow their passions again. It became more than just an album. It became a message. As her career grew, she never forgot her roots. She still visited the Children's Music Center whenever she could, playing for them and teaching simple tunes. She still practiced in quiet rooms when no one was watching. Fame didn't change her. It only gave her more reasons to stay true to herself. One day, years later, she returned to that same mall where it had all begun. The piano was still there, though it looked a little older now. People passed by just as they did that first day. She smiled and sat down, her fingers brushing the keys. For a moment she hesitated, remembering how unsure she had been back then. Then she started to play. The familiar melody filled the air, warm and gentle. Some shoppers stopped, curious. A few recognized her and began filming, whispering excitedly. But she didn't play for them. She played for the girl she used to be, the one who laughed nervously, thinking it was just a prank. She played for her mother, for her teacher, for the children, for everyone who ever believed in her. And for a few minutes, time seemed to stand still. When she finished, a small crowd applauded softly. She smiled, nodded, and walked away quietly, leaving behind a moment of magic just like before. That night, as she sat by her window, she thought about how unpredictable life could be. How one small choice, one random act, could lead to something extraordinary. Her journey had taught her that it wasn't about being perfect or famous. It was about being real, about sharing what was inside even when it was scary. She looked at her hands, the same hands that had once trembled over the keys, and whispered, "Thank you." The piano had given her more than music. It had given her courage, purpose, and a way to reach people's hearts. And as the city lights flickered outside, she smiled softly, knowing that her story wasn't ending. It was only changing shape, just another song waiting to be written, because after all, every ending is just the beginning of something new. And somewhere in another quiet corner of the world, another person might sit down at a piano, perhaps as a prank or by accident, and discover the same kind of magic she once did.